views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronxtalk. Over the past several weeks, we've done a mini tour of some Bronx neighborhoods. We were up in Norwood and over at Community Board 4, and then we did a show on Concourse Village with the folks at Community Board 4. We were over in Melrose, and tonight we move a touch northward from Melrose and travel to Community Board 6 in the south central Bronx, the neighborhoods that include Belmont, East Tremont, Bronx Park South, and Bathgate. There's a lot of development on the way in those areas. And tonight we check out what's going on. If you want to weigh in with your questions or comments, call in at 718-960-7241. Or you can email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org, and we read them on the air during a future edition of our program. But for the here and now, it's the chair of Community Board 6's Housing and Land Use Committee, Sarah Logan. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. How are you?
Nice to have you. And a planning consultant for the Community Board, an urban planning fellow with Columbia University, Hannah Fleischer. Good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Ms. Logan, let's start with you. Why such a boon in the area? When I spoke to folks at the Community Board, they were like, wait till you see what's going on around here. Why is this happening?
It's happening because there's little land left to develop. And we saw opportunities with what land was left to develop into trying to get affordable housing into the area. Mm-hmm. And developers started approaching us, and they want to build. And we're happy to have them.
Yeah, we certainly want more housing and certainly affordable housing. But why that neighborhood? Listen, every neighborhood's going to say, you know what, we want more affordable housing. Is there something that's conducive or development friendly that's going on in Community Board 6?
We have access to a lot of ways to get to our neighborhood. We have the 2 and the 5 train. We have the 40, a lot of buses. We even have the express bus, which is not too far on the Fordham side, and the Metro North. Mm-hmm. It's accessible through all points.
Mm-hmm. And I would say there's probably also, a real vibrant community and something that everybody knows. For example, in Belmont, people say, wow, Arthur Avenue, what a great place to live, because it's kind of a hustle and bustle and all those kinds of things. What kinds of considerations do developers look for that you've already mentioned, transportation, those things, but what makes this community board so friendly when it comes to development? Because there are other community boards that would love it, but it hasn't jived just yet.
I wouldn't say that it's friendly. It's something that was needed. And they came to us, and we agreed to give them the opportunity to create their vision in our area.
There are a number of, and we talked about it beforehand, a number of areas that are being developed. And frankly, I thought they were well-known areas. As you know, what got me interested in it was an article in the Daily News about Webster and Tremont, and
yes.
There was a story about that. Let's just get into that, and then we'll bring Ms. Fleischer in and talk in general about some of the other larger issues when we try to do these things. Mm-hmm. But let's start with that. The Daily News talked about that corner, and it's very well known. As you come down the hill at Tremont, you get to Webster Avenue. It's kind of a big open space. A lot of people know Frank's Sports Shop is right there. There used to be the church is still there, and then you go up toward Southern Boulevard over there. Yeah. So what's over there, and what do we expect? And folks can show a picture of that Tremont project.
It was a bank which will be demolished to make room for 200 and so odd apartments, which will be below market rate.
Let's. There's a picture of that development. Now, what makes this? This is being done by Mastermind Development. What makes this particular project special or interesting or exciting for you?
What makes it exciting is that it's going to be affordable. A lot of development that's coming up in Manhattan and other boroughs are market rate apartments. But this is for people to be able to afford to live in, and hopefully will be there for a period of time.
Is it set up so that, and nowadays, anytime they put up a big building, and all of a sudden they say, "Oh yeah, it's affordable," and then you look between the lines, and all of a sudden they say, "Well, 20% or 18% is affordable." Do you have a percentage in this case of how that rent structure is going to happen?
Off the top of my head, I don't have that, but yes, we do have a percentage that is geared towards low income.
Lower income,
yes.
lower and lower middle income.
Yes.
All right, Ms. Fleischer, when you see as an urban planner and you see a development like this, I know what I think about, having sat in this seat for 20 years, and we know the kinds of development in the Bronx. What do you think about in terms of, gee whiz, in order to make this a successful project, I want to see these things? What do you think?
Right, so I think it's great that the development incorporates an affordable component. It's supportive housing, so it offers a large strata of rents based on the area median income. But I think the other really great thing about all of the developments that we've seen going into the neighborhood is that they're all mixed use. So everything we've seen proposed to us is going to have retail and commercial opportunities on the ground floor. And this is really important for creating a development that is integrated with the community and has a chance to give back to the community, even if, not necessarily everybody who lives in the community gets to move in. So you get new residents coming in and you get new commercial uses within the building. And I think that this is kind of the standard now in development, that we understand that mixed use is kind of the ideal building typology.
The fear, and we were talking about this before the show, the fear in the Bronx, and I've been sitting in this seat long enough, is that it comes in and then all of a sudden we find, number one, you mentioned the people from the outside come in and they get the good apartments, maybe even some of the affordable apartments, and then the commercial spaces are not run by Bronxites, they're run by people who buy up the properties and then give Bronxites the minimum wage, or what they call now a living wage, of $10 an hour, which frankly is not a living wage. And then all of a sudden we're still in this poverty cycle, which we're all, of course, want to desperately break. So how do we put in either safeguards or assurances that if the community board makes the commitment to develop this project, that it comes out the way we in the Bronx want it to come out?
Right, so I know that in the discussions that I've been a part of with the Land Use
With
Committee.
this particular project?
With
Or
this
in
particular project,
Great.
we had the developer come and present to us 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
I believe 2 weeks ago. And so they talked to us about the AMIs that they're offering, and they told us
The
that
what?
there's the area median income.
Want to make sure. Technical terminology.
Yeah, and they told us that there's going to be a 50% priority for people who live in Community District 6, which is really great to hear. And they also told us that they're going to be looking for commercial tenants with real estate agents who are from the Bronx.
Wow.
So these are all really good signs.
Are there, and again, I hate to be this way, but I have just seen it happen. Are there assurances in writing? Are we just kind of hoping that people have goodwill? Is it possible to put these things in writing? Or are we just hoping that the developer is not greedy enough to want money from elsewhere?
Right, so one of the things that I did after we had that meeting is essentially what they're coming to us for is they're asking for a letter of support and a letter of recommendation for their project. So listening to Sarah and what the other committee members had to say and people who came to the meeting, I wrote up a series of recommendations that I believe need to be in our letter of support. And one of them was emphasizing the need for commercial uses that reflect the needs of the community as it exists right now, and making sure that they're not commercial uses that are only thinking about people who are going to be coming into the neighborhood who are new, but also things that people in the community right now need. I know that child care centers came up a lot in our discussions and that type of thing, and all we can do at this point is tell them very specifically what we want and what we think is the best for our community, and that's the role of the advisory board in being the community board.
Ms. Logan, so let's just follow kind of, okay, so let's say you have a movement of people from one place to another, and presumably people who would leave their homes maybe in that community where they live elsewhere in Tremont or near Crotona Park or wherever it is, and they move in. Now they've vacated apartments that are lesser You know, in other words, how do we keep a vibrant community without creating kind of more, for want of a better term, slums or vacated places that all of a sudden now have bigger issues?
Hopefully we won't.
Or am I not thinking right?
No, well, there's constant movement in the Bronx. So I'm sure when one person moves out of that apartment, there'll be someone else ready to come in.
Right.
And we're also mindful with what the existing managements that we have. We meet with them every so often. You know, what's going on in your buildings? Is everything running right? You know, is there things that we need to like take a look at? We've had meetings with Aquinas, Belmont in the past in terms of the management, the portfolio, and how it was holding up. And that's things that we try to keep track of going forward, you know, so that you're right, it doesn't become an issue later on down the line that nobody's paying attention and it's not being maintained.
Are you concerned about, and for want of a better term, it spells it out perfectly, gentrification, that all of a sudden, Ms. Fleischer talked about people coming in from other places. Gee whiz, you know, we finally get a project that's nice, that improves the neighborhood, but all the people enjoying it are people from elsewhere. You're concerned about the people who would move in?
I'll always be concerned about gentrification only because we have the Bronx Zoo, we have the Botanical Garden, we're in an ideal location. And yeah, people from the outside will be looking at us like, you know, prime location. But we want to make opportunities for the people that already live in the area,
right,
in terms of trying to open up a small business, you know, amenities that will be needed in the area.
Ms. Fleischer, is a way to prevent against that kind of thing? And this dialogue, by the way, is happening everywhere in the Bronx.
Yeah.
I mean, right even down the block because of the Kingsbridge National Ice Center that's coming. And believe me, I've sat in this seat enough to know it's happening in every neighborhood. They're concerned that we finally get good things and we're not going to benefit.
Right. I think one of the biggest keys to making sure that development goes in the direction that the community wants is for the community to be engaged. People need to come to the community board meetings and they need to come to the committee meetings and understand what's going on so they can take advantage of the opportunities as soon as they come up, so they know when the applications are available to be in to get these apartments, and they know when the leases are going to be up for the commercial spaces, and they can express interest to open businesses in those spaces. Because what's going on in Tremont and West Farms right now is a lot bigger than these developments. They've done the rezonings on Tremont Avenue. There's going to be a lot of changes in the commercial sectors of the neighborhood, and it's up to people to be engaged and understand the processes and take advantage of opportunities that present themselves.
Speaking of opportunities, I have to just interject. For you, as somebody who's studying this must be just a wonderful way to learn, and you get to be on TV and all that. But really, to learn and work in a place that really has need and potential solutions, right? It must be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And because the developments are so unprecedented in this neighborhood, you know, we do have the opportunity to preempt any negative effects that you might have seen in other neighborhoods in terms of gentrification, because we're going to have our eyes on it, we're going to study it, and we're going to figure out what the community needs are specifically for these developments going forward.
This, of course, is why we brought her along.
Yes.
But let's just talk about something that we did on the show a couple of weeks ago. We had Wedco here, and they presented a community survey. We turned it into a dialogue about public health, so that you could say, well, this is a development that's happening, but these are the things we want in there that will help, build public health, whether it be, environmentally friendly and various other amenities. Do we have the cart before the horse, and all of a sudden now we say, gee whiz, we're going to do development, now we want to study what we want? In other words, would it have been preferred to do what they did, or would you simply use what Wedco did and say, you know what, maybe the numbers aren't exact, but we know these are essentially the same kinds of people?
Right. I mean, I think there's been a lot of really relevant study going on in the community. Wedco did their study, the Sheridan Parkway, the DOT did a study of that area. So we know that things are changing, and we have a good sense because of from all these studies of what community desires are. And I don't think that it's necessarily, coming after the cart to pay attention.
She
because
beat me back. Get back.
Because I think that, this is a new dynamic that's coming to the neighborhood, and things haven't happened yet, but the opportunity is there for things to happen.
A couple of questions for you, Ms. Logan, about the nature of the infrastructure in the area. Now, we did a show on the idea of a new neighborhood being created in Concourse Village that was written up in the newspaper because they said, here's an area now we may have a 63rd neighborhood in the Bronx. One of the issues that came up from people who reacted on Facebook was, well, you know, you're going to bring new development in, but you're not developing the infrastructure. You're not developing the traffic infrastructure. You may not be adding more seats in our schools. Maybe we need other supportive facilities. Are these things a concern, or are there plans for these kinds of things?
They are concerned, and they are in plans that
okay.
we're working on. One of the projects, which is a signature project on Boone Street, will be bringing over 1,300 units of apartments. With that, 2 of those buildings will be within our board. So one of the things
I
that
think
we
that, by the way, we have a picture of that, so let's put that picture up. We'll get that up there in a second while you're talking, so describe
so
that. Let's get
what
that picture
we
up.
asked of them was that it would tax the schools. Is there a building that we could utilize as a school building if it comes to that point? And it's in the plans. There is a building on Boone Street.
Can we get that second photo? I'd like to get that up there.
That if there's overcrowding in the schools, that there's a potential to have that building for school. For school.
Now, this project is a very large project. Folks will know the name Gifford Miller, who is the former president of the Speaker of the City Council.
Yes.
He's involved in this. The New York Times, in the article where that photo is taken from, called it a small city. This bridges over 2 community boards.
Yes,
right?
to 3 and 6. Yes.
And so, what's your piece of it, and where
Our
is that
piece is on Boone Street. It's 2 buildings. They haven't broken ground yet, and it will be a mix. Out of the 7 buildings, there'll be 660 units that'll be affordable. It's actually a mixed-use development that's coming up. And since 2 of ours, and they haven't broken ground yet, we're looking to make sure that we have things in place so when it does, it's completed and people moved in, that we have mitigated whatever it may develop in terms of the taxing the police, taxing the schools, like you said, the infrastructure. We're also working with the Department of Transportation in terms of Tremont and 177th Street to fix some of the issues when it comes to the traffic pattern in that area.
Wouldn't it be nice, I just been daydreaming here for a moment, if after a little while we get a couple of really nice projects up there, and people from elsewhere say, you know what, that seems like a nice place to live. You live near the zoo,
yes.
you're near transportation, there's some nice cafes or nice stores in the area, right? And
Yes.
that's where we're going with this,
Exactly,
right?
yes.
I want to ask both of you the same question, and I'll start with you, and then we'll let Ms. Fleischer weigh in on it. We present all of our shows on Facebook and all the different Bronx Facebook pages when we promote. And we promoted the fact that we were doing this. One gentleman wrote right away that he was concerned that every time we put up housing, it includes public expenditure, and that he would rather see completely private development because that's real investment in the Bronx, whereas public, of course, we're kind of all paying for it in some ways. So talk to me about the funding of these projects. Are these private only? Are these being supplemented with public funds? And then your thoughts about the whole concept.
They're being supplemented with public funding,
They are.
and I think that's where the affordability comes in. If it was strictly a private developer, we may not have an option of affordable housing. It would be market rate, and that wouldn't be conducive to the area, being that the area medium income
Of course,
happens to
and
be
then,
low.
then we'd have gentrification of the worst kind.
Exactly.
Are the public supports coming in the form of literally cash, or is it really in tax breaks and helping the developer see?
I'm
the
sure
way
it's a
through?
combination of both tax
Okay.
breaks and cash as well.
Let's go to our urban planner. Conceptually,
Right.
You understand what I was
Yeah.
suggesting. Really, what I didn't take his name down, but the gentleman who had written up, I thought it was a very thoughtful comment. Is that he's like, we keep paying for it one way or another. We're supporting it. It costs us money. What are your thoughts on the whole
Right,
concept?
I think that, because development of this type is very unprecedented in this neighborhood, this is a good step in the right direction. And, we don't want to see gentrification, and we don't want to see a really rapid acceleration of investment from outside people into the neighborhood if they don't have the neighborhood's best interest in mind. And so, having a mix of the public and private funding and making sure that these are affordable units is a good way to slowly improve the neighborhood and allow much more organic change to come from within. And so maybe people will be more interested in investing in businesses, or there's still going to be, I believe, some light manufacturing areas in the rezoned sector. So maybe people will want to start up businesses like that, and those will be private investments, and that's the kind of thing that we want to stimulate. But I think in the housing market, especially in a neighborhood like this, it's very important to make sure that this is supported with a public mandate, that it remains affordable for the people who live there.
One of the things that challenges community boards all the time, and I'm just curious, you come from elsewhere and you're learning about our neighborhoods and studying it, so I'm curious what you think about the process, the approval process.
Right.
Is that sometimes developers get a hold of things and all of a sudden the community says, well, wait a minute, how did he get this? We don't like that particular company, they are track record. Is our process in place now so we can do well, or would you like to see certain other protections in place or qualifications before developers get in there?
Right. I mean, I think the fact that there has been a large rezoning in the neighborhood along Tremont Avenue and Webster is a good step.
I forgot to mention that.
Right. It's a good step in terms of protecting the neighborhood and making sure that only specific types of uses can go in that are conducive to what the neighborhood needs. I think that the community board is a great body. It's an advisory body. It allows a lot of oversight, and I think Community Board 6 is really lucky to have Iveen, who's been there for so long and knows so many people and knows what's going on.
You can't fool Iveen. I can tell you that. Yeah. She's watching now, I know.
Yeah. And so, she knows what's going on, and I think that there is a good process. I mean, there are always going to be times when developers do things as of right, so it means that they already have the right with the ownership of the land to develop in a certain way, and they don't have to check in with anybody to do that, and that is going to happen, and all we can do is be diligent, watching for changes, checking, the tax lot information, understanding who owns what and what's going on, and I think it's clear that there are a lot of people in Community Board 6 who are very interested in what's going on, and they're very diligent and they're watching it. So I think that the process is working well for this neighborhood right now.
You are sitting next to one of them just to your left. Ms. Logan, in a way, I thought when I asked my very first question is, why is this happening in your area? You might mention this, and that is, I do think you have a good functioning board and that they really do care. And you've been in that spot, which we were talking about beforehand, for a decade or more. Talk to me about, because we're talking to the whole Bronx, talk to me about what it would take for other neighborhoods who are watching right now to say, you know what, my neighborhood could use this kind of thing too. And we have, and I know you have the zoo and the garden in your area, but you know what, we have beautiful waterways and other things in other areas. How does this get duplicated so other communities can say, you know what, we want to make this happen too. We want good development in our neighborhood.
You have to be involved. Just like Hannah said, you have to be part of the process. You have to go to your meetings. You don't have to join the board, but go to the committee meetings. Let the committees know this is what you want to see in your neighborhood. Fight for what you want. We're complainers. We are. No, I'm talking about
the Bronx.
The Bronx.
Yeah,
we complain.
Hey, nobody knows more than me. I do it more than anybody over here.
But in order for progress to happen, we have to be part of the solution, and then it's being involved in your community boards and bringing it to the table and say, listen, this is what we want to see for our neighborhoods, and then the conversation starts to change.
Just the numbers, 1,000 new housing units, 72,000 square. Look at us. Sarah's like,
it's a lot.
Yeah, there's 72,000 square feet of commercial space. I have to tell you, there's two things. One is in my statement about protections, we want to make sure environmentally that we're doing it. We want green development, but we also really want commercial businesses that really help a community. I'm not against franchise stores,
Right.
but you got to have that mix.
The mom and shop.
Mom and
pop shops.
Listen,
Yes.
I want more Belmont neighborhoods. you know?
Yes.
That's what we want.
Definitely.
So for people who want more information, how do they can contact you, or we go through the community board? and those
Community
kinds of
board.
things?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. And they can find out what the schedules are for the meetings and keep up with us. And
More of the same here, or you say, you know what, let's hold the line. What's your recommendation from the urban planner point of view about what's in that community board?
do you mean more development?
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
I think that there's a lot coming in and there's a lot to work with as it stands. And, you know, it's probably best to take it slow at this point and see how these play out a little bit and make sure that they're molded to the community's needs. I mean, one of the things that I'm going to be doing is surveying the neighborhood and trying to understand what people want, what their desires are for the future, what they believe the business
Do you
needs
foresee
are.
a formal survey like the one Wedco did? Or, I mean, listen, believe me, I understand the value of just talking to people.
Yeah. I mean, as much as I can
Whatever you
do,
can
I'm with
do.
the community board for 7 more months.
And Ms. Logan, for you, it's just making sure this works, right?
Yes.
I didn't mention, by the way, Phipps has something coming up.
Yes,
Tremont
we
and
have
Mars, 3 buildings.
3 buildings coming
Wow.
up on
So
Phipps. 200 odd units coming up.
West Farms has a couple of buildings, right?
Yes, by the owner of the Howard Johnson.
Which raised a flag in my mind. You feel secure with that?
At the moment, yeah. I mean, it's affordable housing. He came to us and let us know this is what his idea was. We asked for we asked him what was going to be on a commercial space, and we advocated again for either pre-K space or after-school program for the youth.
Got it. Hannah Fleischer, thank you so much, and thanks for making a commitment to the BX. We like that. And Sarah Logan, we appreciate all the things you're doing over there, and all my friends at CB6. Tell them I
Thank
said
you.
hello.
I shall.
Great, thank you. Folks, a couple of things coming up. One is they wanted me to make sure to mention that BronxNet has their Halloween Fitness 5K and Family Flat Run. It benefits the preservation of the cross-country trail over there in Van Cortlandt Park. That is coming up this Sunday at 12:30 p.m. And just come on out. I guess you can. There's registration. There's the email for registration. So we want to tell people about that. And if you have further comments or questions or anything you heard on tonight's show, anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org, or you put them on our Facebook page and we read them like we did just a moment ago during a future edition of our program. We ask you to like Bronx Talk on Facebook. You can keep up to what we're doing, and you can check our archives, see all the old shows at bronxnet.org. You'll find Bronx Talk on the lower right navigation bar. Now, everybody knows, and if you don't, where have you been, the big 20th anniversary celebration for this program, 20 years, will take place Wednesday night, October 22nd, at the Andrew Friedman Home on the Concourse and 165th Street. It is going to be a great event, open to the public, so you are invited. Wednesday, October 22nd, beginning at 8 o'clock. We're going to tape a show. You can watch the show, and then I'll be walking around with a microphone talking to you right after that. Should be a lot of fun. Wednesday, October 22nd, Andrew Friedman Home, 165th in the Concourse. 20 years. I was a much younger man back then. Thanks to producer Dalia Gonzalez, director Neilani Rodriguez. We'll see you next week. Or we'll see you Wednesday night, live! Good night. Next week we'll do the show, right? We'll put it up on the air. Goodbye.